Hi, it's September 27th, 2010. My name is Jasmine Stanley, and I am joined by my group members Dustin Morris and Rachel Rose in the home of Anne Leikach in Pikesville, Maryland. And this is the first of 3 interviews. Hi. So thank you so much for having us in your home. So you were born, where were you born
In
again?
Poland, and the city of Naples, and it's 56 kilometers from Warsaw, the capital.
And can you describe the town a little bit?
It was really a beautiful little town, not like not like a huge city, not to compare to all the city, major cities in America. It was in 1930s, so it's not like it was with the new technologies and everything. There were no cars in our city. There were just 1 or 2 cars that, were just to somebody special, maybe the boss, not a boss, but the starosta or somebody that from the municipal government or something. But most people were just going on foot or horse and buggies and stuff like that. But it was a very, in my opinion, it was a nice modern, compared to that time, a nice modern city. The population in the center of the city were most predominantly Jewish. On the outskirts of the Gentile population lived most around the surrounding areas, mostly in the outskirts or the farm and the villages around. But in the center of the city that I remember was, most of the merchants were Jewish people. Saturday was closed to businesses. Everybody, Friday night, everybody closed together, either you were religious or not. And Jewish stores closed on Friday night, and some of them were open Saturday night after the sun came out, or so. That's the end of Shabbat. But the Gentiles celebrated Sunday, so we were not most people's business were not allowed. They were not allowed to conduct businesses on Sundays. But the Jewish population didn't have too much fun. They did something, they go to the side, the back doors, if they needed something from a storekeeper that was not allowed to keep. Our store was allowed to be open on Sundays because we happened to be having like candies and chocolates and ice cream and such kind that people used to, that was allowed to by the government, not that we wanted to, but it was allowed by the government to be legally open. But if you needed to buy materials or anything that wasn't necessary for eating, then you were not allowed to conduct businesses on Sundays. But the Jewish people didn't conduct any businesses on Saturday. But those that needed something, they knew the person that sells stockings, and she got to the back door and she bought from her a pair of stockings. But legally, they couldn't have the stores open. So, on this circumstances, Friday night, everybody closed, the Jewish people closed the businesses, and the men usually came home, they washed up, changed, and went to shul. And it was mostly the fathers with the sons that were going to shul. Very few women or girls would go Friday night or so. But Saturday morning, my father took the boys, and my mother actually didn't go every Shabbat to shul, but she went on all the major holidays. She went to shul, and after the shul was ended, my mother and I and my sister and myself, I have an older sister. She lives in Israel, and I have also a younger sister and a younger brother. They live in Detroit. And we used to just get up after that. The father went away to shul with my brothers. We just get up, we clean up, get dressed, prepare the table for the Shabbos meal when my father's going to come back from shul, because that was the main meal. And, we just prepared the table nice, the bed's made, we all dressed up nice, for Shabbat meal. And by 12 o'clock or 12:30, my father would come in with my brothers. And if it was a special kind of holiday, a special kind of vacation, he would bring along a friend. And if not only this, but the Jewish population was looking up for, in Europe, most people didn't ride on Shabbat. And if a stranger was coming into our town, they wouldn't ride, they didn't get any transportation, so the state of the community, the Jewish community in our town provided for them shelter, where to sleep, and the people from the synagogues, there were many, there was one main synagogue, but there was also quite a number of small facilities that served to a special rabbis community. There were special rabbis, certain rabbis from different cities, from Poland or from Lithuania, that they had a not following up, but a following after, for them. And they was having, I remember in the building that we lived, there was 56 tenants, it was stores and also some living quarters. But I remember there was, coming down from our second floor apartment building, there was one room that was a little stiebel. It was called the stiebel. And that belonged to, I don't remember the rabbi that this particular stiebel was following, but I know that my father's father, my grandfather, belonged to that. And sometimes if I ran down the steps in the morning to go to school, I would just run into him. He was doing the morning prayers, because most religious people would just go to the synagogue or to the shtetl and pray every morning and every night during the night. But so I would run into him, but at different locations there were different kind of little stiebels like that, and they accommodated, I don't know how many people belong to that, but it was maybe like 50 or 60 or something like that. But my father was sort of like a mother. He was a Zionist, and he was very much working for Palestine. At that time was not Israel. He was a Zionist organization. I have a book from that was issued. I was just reading it with my son, because I had it from some people from our city contributed after the war to write some articles, whatever. They had memories. But we'll get to this. I'll tell you how our city, changed until the wartime. But the city was a very nice town. We had a river coming through, an important river coming through our city, and then another smaller river that was going into that river, and that was going through the center of the city. And whenever we would just, of course, every day when I was going from my house to school was quite a long distance. It was maybe 15 or 20 blocks, but that was nothing. We were used to that. We were in the wintertime, we were wearing boots. We were wearing just warm winter coats and hats and gloves, because it was cold. The weather was, European weather. European winters are, quite cold. And but we walked to school, and we just didn't mind the distance. We were dressed. That's how it was. And of course, we were in school. I think it was 8 o'clock. So we got ourselves ready, and we were in school in time. And we came from school. My mother had the dinner ready, a hot meal cooked, and then that's how we did our homework. And every family there was to tell my family was comfortable. We had a store. Was selling different products from different companies. Plus, we sold our own products. My father was a candy maker, and we used to make candies, different kinds, and we also sold to different city stores, different stores in other cities. And so we were comfortable to say that we were rich. I've been saying that, because it wasn't like here when children get married, the parents help out with this and with that. And there, the parents didn't help out with anything. I know from what I was told that when my mother came from another city, my father was in Pokrovsk, and his parents were candy makers, and that's all that he knew what to do. So when he got married, and they tried to settle to produce candies together, for some reason my mother just got married, and they needed to have a family, get children, build their own home. So it just didn't work out to be together with the grandparents. They still had 2 daughters and another son. So my father started off on his own, and it was struggling very much because it was not a big city that had a lot of need for a lot of candies, and that's all that he knew what to do. But we took in different things in the store. We tried in my memory, I remember we tried crystals, and we tried pots and pans, different, we kept it in the store, a certain area in the store for this displayed. Beside that, we were selling not groceries, I was selling kerosene. I remember there was a pump in the store that was selling kerosene, because that was the need for all of these things. We didn't have running water most of the homes didn't have running water or toilets, The toilets were outhouses in the courtyards, and most every house, building had an outhouse outside. But that's how that was the life, We were, this was the normal of events, You needed to go to the bathroom. You had to go to a place that was like maybe 10 or 8 little rooms. Some of them were quite filthy. Some of them were clean. That depend. If we had one that was with a lock, so it was only we used. So we knew we could sit down there, and it was wood. It wasn't like you have this modern toilet. But it was clean, it was our own, because we knew only our family had a little key to. But a few people in the building had this private one, but most of them were public for everybody. So of course you can imagine that, people didn't, and it wasn't like you had today. There was one man that was keeping the facility. He was the one that was sweeping. He was the one that was looking. He used to come every Saturday morning and light our stove, because we were not supposed to make a fire. So he would come into every house, whoever arranged this. He used to get a piece of challah, and he used to get paid something. So he came in after Shabbat. My father gave him something. I don't know how much he paid him. But that was because we were not allowed. We were not very religious, but we were observant people. And we didn't make a fire in the house, but because we had to heat up the food when father comes from shul, that the soup should be hot and the meat should be warmed up and stuff like that. So we had, so this is how he was the keeper from the building. He was just a worker. And so, but so he, I think this, talking about the outhouse, I think a couple times a year they used to clean it out, so then we knew we had to close the windows, because it was a very big stench. But it was, I was visiting actually Poland last year, a year and a half ago, with my sister and her family, and they have no more outhouses. And there were cars parked in the courtyards now, and there were a lot of cars in the streets. But that was the change. And what else shocked me, we happened to come in on Saturday, and there was a marketplace full with merchants. And it was never Saturday. It was a quiet little town. I mean, everybody was in shul, because the Jewish population was the one that lived in the city. We had market days on Tuesdays and Fridays, so the farmers used to bring their goods to the market. And I know my mother would go to shop whatever she needed for potatoes and carrots and chicken and cheese and whatever, butter. Everything was fresh, made from the farmers. They brought their goods in the store to the market to sell. And my mother would just go, but one of us kids would go along with little baskets in her hand to help her, whatever she would buy to carry it home. Tuesday, during the summer, we would buy a lot of stuff Friday, but when we bought a chicken or a duck or turkey, it was alive. And we had to take it to the shochet, the rituals when they killed it. And then we would bring it home. We had to take the feathers off and cut it up, and then kosher that, and soak it for an hour, and soak it for half an hour and salt it for an hour, the other way around. And then we started to make a challah. We baked our own challah. And if it's in the summertime, it was enough time for the dough to rise if she started early in the morning. But in the winter time, I remember she would make the dough Thursday night. because, Friday morning, the dough was puffed up, and then we should made out of hollow. We carried it. We had at home our oven that we could bake, but it didn't bake it so well. So we used to carry it to the city baker. During that, they allowed us to bring the hollow because we were customers. During the week, we used to buy the bread or rolls or whatever we needed for when I got up in the morning to school, to get ready for school. I used to go to the bakery. My older sister used to stay home in the house. Well, a woman brought in milk to the house, and she knew how much to bring every day. And the milk had to be boiled because it wasn't pasteurized like it is now. So my sister would be home. She would get the milk from the woman. She would knock on the door, and we knew who she was. She knew how much milk for today and how much for the next time. And my sister would be boiling it. I went to the baker and I brought enough bread and rolls for the rest of the day for the family. I was told probably by my mother or somebody what we need. And that's why the baker allowed us to bake, because the bakery they didn't bake any bread anymore at that time, because they usually bake the bread and get up early middle of the night and they bake it by morning's time. They don't bake anymore because all their goods is done, and they have stores, and they were selling the stuff in the stores. So we could use the bakery facility and the ovens, and my sister, the older sister, was very good, and she used to put it in the oven. She knew when to pick it up. And sometimes she would go into the same baker, and she would take along a bag with all kinds of flour and sugar and butter and eggs, and she'd go away for a few hours, and she'd come back with all kinds of delicious stuff that she baked. And sometimes her mother would tell me, Hannah, let go, help her to bring the stuff home. She probably has all the stuff. To go to the baker, she could carry it in one basket, but to come back, she had a lot of goodies, some blueberry buns and all kinds of good stuff. And she was very handy there. So that was, some people used to put Friday night, they would carry a chunt to that same baker. There were several bakers in the city. We used to use the one that we just mostly was closest to our store, and we used to buy there. They knew us, we knew them. When you live in a small town, everybody knows everybody, especially if you had a business in the front of the main street, and it was such a business that most people would come to buy. I used to make our own ice cream, and we made all kinds of juices to make drinks, mixed drinks to make. And we were selling chocolates, and we were selling our own products and some other products from different companies. So for Passover, we used to get a whole truckload of matzah, because in Europe, most people used to bake their own matzah. They would go make a certain day, Passover, before Passover time. They'd make arrangements with the baker. They would establish especially a kosher baker to bake Passover matzah. They would just go, but their matzah was very thick and sort of hard. But we used to buy, I think my father used to bring this from Lithuania, I believe, but that's what matzah like you eat here. But I don't remember if they were round. I can't recall if they were square like here or they were round. But they're fine and, just like this matzah. And I know my girlfriends used to always come to eat my matzah because their matzah was very thick and hard to chew. And our matzah was very sweet. And we had a lot of Gentile people. They used to come Passover time. They liked matzah. They used to come to our store to buy it. So we were selling a lot of stuff, not just our products. But because my father was, I started to say he started off small, and taking in everything like this. The dishes didn't work. We didn't make enough in it to bother with it. We gave it up. Then he started something else. Then we moved into a different location. So it was a little bit more business in that particular street. The business improved, and it was getting a little bit more aggressive. We were trying to get customers from villages that had stores and the farmers around, the little towns around. And we also saw, and that was, I remember a few years we stayed in that address. In my memory, I know the war broke out, I was 16 years old. But in the 16 years that I happened to start remembering, so we were the third address that I know. that we had for the business, for the store and the factory. It was always 3 rooms. The last 2 places it was like one store, and then in the back of the store was a big room, and in the back of that store that room was another room, and that was the factory. And so my father would produce candies, and to make candies is a process that at certain times you need to have more than one person, because the sugar gets hard very quick. So you got to produce it, whatever you make, if you make hard candies or you make filled candies or something. So sometimes he would need my mother to give him a hand. So she would just let one of the customers say, keep and watch a few minutes. So you trusted people, because it was neighbors that you knew who they were. And my mother had to run in and give my father a hand. But he only did work like one day a week to make candies, and he could make enough, to produce whatever our need was. And if he would have more need for something, if some product was moving faster, he would be out of it. He could make an extra, because it was up to us, whatever the need was. We didn't employ any people that we needed to hire somebody who was around that. And at that time, the children were young. We were like 2 years apart. I had an older brother and an older sister and me, and then I had a younger brother and a younger sister. So it was difficult for my parents to raise a young family and to also be working in the business, to work itself out. But the last address, we moved into the center, the main street of the city, which was half a block from the marketplace, and actually the center of the street of this business area. And in the meantime, the kids were growing up, to getting a little bit older. So my mother was able to work a little bit more with my father in the store, and then my older brother was a little bit more helping my father, and it became easier to improve the business. And I remember that we did, at one time, we took in a billiard table in the back from the store. We made a partition from the big room, and we put in a billiard table, and we had a telephone, which was an unusual thing. The billiard people put in a telephone, and we tried it out, because my father was trying to progress, if to just making candies would probably be a very poor life. So he was getting all kinds of different ideas. He would go to Warsaw and print labels with we had our own emblem. Her name was, my father's name was Abram Gershon Vigoda. So he made Agevu, Abram Agevu, and we had a little lion or something, I remember, printed the labels. We were wrapping candies individual with our own name, so we became known in the area. And sometimes if a salesman from a different chocolate company or something, but they would come to us to get ordered for us, we would give him some samples from our products, and he would, when he would go to different cities, so he would show them this kind of stuff, would they be able to sell it. So he would mail to us a postcard, because at that time you communicated with the mail. Most people didn't have telephones. And he would drop us a postcard, and for this, in this city, he wanted 25 kilograms of this particular candy and 5 kilograms for that. And then my father my father would make up the merchandise. And my brother he was already a little bit, he was 4 years older than I was, so he would take it to the post office and ship it, and they would send us later, a check or something. And so that's how the business was growing, because my brother was helping out, and sometimes he would go over to the storekeepers, and he would tell them, well, did you sell he would leave some merchandise for nothing. Just write it down, I left you a kilo of this and 2 kilos of that. And then he came a week later and says, oh, you sold that, so you need, shall I send you another 2 kilo or 1 kilo? And he took another, and that's how we started to get, to grow, to get a little bit more business. If you do more business, you make more profit. and the kids were growing up, so we were more, we didn't, my mother was more able to help out, and it was like, one for all and all for one. So everybody was working for the good of the family. There was no such a thing as, I don't ever remember my mother telling me, go do this or go that. We just automatically, we knew if things needed to be done. And it was very difficult because you didn't buy, you had to make noodles for Shabbos. So you had to make the flour and the dough and the eggs and to roll it out and cut it and boil it. It wasn't like it is now. You open a bag and you have noodles. So it's for American people, it's a little bit difficult to think, how can you do in one Friday, make the challah, buy the chicken and have it to the shochet and kosher it, and until you light candles, everything is done. The challahs were baked, the chicken was cooked, and the side dishes were made, and you made very nice, try to provide, make healthy and nice looking, special nicer dishes for the holidays or for Shabbat, and that was that's how most of our life was, and slowly we were growing, getting more, more comfortable. So I remember, when the kids were growing, my sister, my brother was, when the war broke out, he was 19 years old, but my sister was 17, she was 2 years younger, so I remember it was, for her, because she was the older, I didn't mind. It wasn't like you go out and buy an outfit for this party or for that. We had one nice outfit for Shabbat and holidays, and that was it. You didn't have to have 20 different suits or dresses or stuff. And whatever, for playing, whatever was too small for my sister, it was for me, and I didn't mind at all. And when my sister became, I think she was 17 years old, my mother decided that she is a girl, she needs to look pretty, so to attract nice boys. So she went and bought material, and she made a navy blue suit, and you didn't, you couldn't go and buy it ready. So you went to a seamstress, she was my girlfriend of my mother's, and they had, styles from French magazines, you pick a style, what kind of suit, how you like it, and she would take measurements and sew it, and then you go to a store that they sell hats, they make hats, and you fit it to the style or the color that would go with this suit. I remember my mother was trying very much to make it look very pretty, and we matched up even a umbrella to go with it, and it, because she was 17 years old, she needs to be, seen wearing nice stuff and all that stuff. So this was part of growing up, and I was not at all jealous. I was so happy that she, was going to look so pretty, and I was so, one of the boys that had a business across the street, he sort of came to borrow a book. My father was reading a lot, and Yiddish books. We had a library of Yiddish books, and a lot of friends and neighbors used to come to us to borrow some books. So he pretended that he's coming to borrow a book, but in the meantime, he asked my sister to go see a movie with him. So I was following them, and they were chasing me away. I didn't even realize that they wanted to have privacy, but I was, just young kids. We didn't think, we didn't, there's no jealousy. I just felt like I want to see where they're going, or just like a little pest, you try to chase away. But that was the life of a small town.
So what exactly were the age ranges of your siblings?
Yeah,
your sisters 2 years apart?
my oldest brother was 2 years older. I mean, I was it was 2 years a difference between my oldest brother to my younger sister, to my older sister, and 2 years to me. And then from me to my brother was 5 years, the younger one, and then I had one, my sister, was a year and a half. We were 5 kids.
And what exactly was like the dynamic? So if your brothers would go off to shul, you would just be with your sisters?
Well, my brother, my father would go with my older brother and my younger brother too. When he was old enough, for 4 years or 5 years, he would go with my father. And my mother and I would just, we would just, be at home Saturday. Because we had dinner last night, so everybody fell asleep because it didn't start until after Shabbat starts, and then they come from shul. The young kids mostly fell asleep before they even ate, so my mother would bake a big challah. She baked extra challah that we liked when it was warm. So we all ate it before it was Shabbos starting. And so the younger kids fell asleep, they didn't even eat much of their meal. But my father, sometimes he would bring from the shul a man that was happened to be a stranger in town. And if the city provided for them a place where to stay overnight, a safe place to sleep, but they needed a meal, a kosher meal. So they made sure that whoever was a stranger in town, that they had somebody that would take them home for a meal, not to sleep, but they would stay and have a Shabbos meal or a holiday meal. So especially for Friday night, very seldom, but sometimes there were a few people that there were nobody that could or would offer. So my father would just bring it in. It was always, whenever it was a stranger at a table, it was always on the right hand of my father with the biggest respect, and not make them feel that they are, we are giving them anything. And if it was somebody that was an intelligent person, my father would engage him in conversation and whatever was at the time. And of course, when he finished the meal, he was just, said goodbye and thanked, and he walked away. He knew where the place for him to sleep is. And of course, on holidays, especially for Passover, we used to have, sometimes my father would bring 3 or 4 people home, because we used to have a military staying in our city, and there were a lot of Jewish soldiers serving there. But they allowed them, they let them go to synagogues on the holidays, and also, but to eat kosher for Passover, it had to be kosher meals. But they had to be back in the kazarm, in the place where they served, to stay there for the nights. So for the whole holiday Passover, especially the first days and the last days, so and they made sure, so they had a lot of soldiers that were Jewish soldiers that usually their families lived in different cities because they served in the army. So sometimes was a big number so they made sure there was a committee in that synagogue, and my father belonged to the committee, that they made sure that every person that was there, that was a stranger, that didn't have a home, that they have somebody to go to have a holiday meal. If it was for different holidays, it was always a sure thing that, and I think it was such a nice custom that we knew, my mother never knew who's going to come, but whoever came, it was always much joy and given the head of the table and next to my father, and it was very with the greatest of respect. So until today, I always feel like whenever somebody in the family comes by, there's always room. There's never too many people. It's how my life is.
And so did you got on with your siblings?
I seem to get along with my sister, my brothers too. In fact, we had the living quarters were not exactly with the factory, with the store, because it was just one big room, and that room served like we were there during the daytime, but for the nights we had living quarters. It was 2 rooms, and at one time it was on a different street, 3 blocks away, because nothing was available in the store where we had to store the business. But so we had to go to that, to sleep. So sometimes my mother would tell, when we were, the older children had to take the younger ones, because the younger ones had to go to sleep earlier. And you had to take them to this house, it was 3 blocks away. Sometimes she would send my older brother give him a key to the apartment. He had to come and light up. We didn't have electricity, so they had to, at that time, later, they taken it, put on electricity. But at that time, it was just like those globes, you know, a kerosene lamp is a globe. And he would just come in and light it up, and he would stay there because we didn't leave children alone. But later, when we were growing up, then we moved. Eventually, one apartment became available where we had the latest store, but it was not right above our store. It was, we had to go to the courtyard and to go a flight of steps. But you know, so still, when it was time for the younger kids, like my younger sister, my younger brother, my mother would tell me or tell my older sister to go and take the kids upstairs, and I didn't want it. I wanted to stay up near the store because it was people coming in, and we had the radio, so there was some music coming through, some news. But if she told me, no, you have to go, so I would just take a book or something, and I would take them, the younger ones, and they fell asleep. I still had to stay there. But sometimes I just got tired. It was, you know, I did my own homework while I was there. And sometimes she would, my young older sister would go with me. And we would just both, you know, sometimes we would just play cards while the kids were asleep upstairs. And then we got sleepy and we went to sleep, and our parents came in quietly and they went to sleep. And in the morning it was the same thing. We get up, you know, me and my sister got up and we went to the, she made the sandwiches because you know, she made scrambled eggs or something, a roll of sandwich, you know, for lunch, and we went away to school. And my mother got up later. She went down to the store and helped my father during the day. And by the time we came back from school, my mother had, you know, she cooked the main meal, and you know, and then we sat down at the home. If it was summertime, wintertime, we had a lot of times we were wrapping some, especially Christmas time. We were selling a lot of stuff for the Christian customers, the farmers, the villagers. They used to come and buy to dress up their Christmas trees. So we used to have wrapped a lot of our candies in different color cellophane, you know, and in the foils. So some of this merchandise was more, we used to have people that used to come and buy, take out, we weigh them up 5 kilo of this, they would take it in their home. It was cheap material, not very expensive candies. And we would just weigh up how much it is, and we used to pay them by the pound for wrapping. And they would bring us the next day because they were at home wrapping their children, help them out. But chocolate products was a little bit more costly to give it out to somebody. So we used to sit around, and my mother would cut the materials, the paper, because that was also expensive. It had to be cut without waste. So, but I would just get my girlfriends around, my brother had his friend, and we would sit around a big table and we would wrap all the chocolate stuff and we were singing all kinds of songs and having a good time. My mother would make maybe this potato pancakes, and we had a good time, and by the few hours we were sitting there, we wrapped up a lot of candies. That was a big help for my father, because they were selling at Christmas time to you know, dress up the Christmas trees. And we also used to buy, get all kinds of fancy things that had nothing to do with candies, that the people for dressing the trees, they used to buy from us. There were those very delicate glass, you know, globes and balls and different kinds of figurines that they were buying. And when the farmers used to come for the market time, when it was market time, they would come to the store, and I remember as children, when it was Christmas time, when the Tuesdays and Fridays, we remembered when we were going from school, even if it was far away, we didn't play around with my girlfriends anyway, but we rushed home because we felt we need to be in the store to watch, because a lot of those farmers used to come with big blankets on their wrapped, and they would pick up something and put it under the blanket and not pay. So if there were more people in the store, the children watching, we would, you know, we knew we had to keep an eye. I was not even told that, but we knew that was a problem with a lot of stealing and stuff. So we felt like that was our responsibility to be in the store, to help because father and mother would be busy tending to customers, but we would be looking at this because we displayed merchandise. So it was very easy to pick it up and put it in a pocket, but if we were looking around, so we felt like we were helping out. We were doing, some service to the family. But it was at particular times of the year.
What was your relationship like with your parents?
I felt I never heard any time that my mother would yell at us. I don't ever remember. Sometimes I talked to my sisters and brothers. I said, didn't we ever have sometimes your father would spank you or yell at you, or why did you? I don't remember that. I can't believe that we were just such angels, but I imagine maybe my parents were, they were busy with their lives, and maybe they didn't nag us like some people just stay on your neck all the time, why you do this and go there. Or maybe we were just, sort of mature enough to be in the time and to realize that, I was not jealous that my mother was making my sister a new outfit and I was wearing her turned on the left side, the coat was worn on one side. She would turn it if she could do it. My mother was doing very good in sewing. She had a sewing machine, actually, but she was sewing just, play clothes, good stuff she used to take to our seamstress. But I didn't mind that I was wearing her turned over the left side, her cloth. It was warm and it was, I thought it was very nice, and I felt comfortable and but I was not, in fact, my sister and I, she was 2 years older, but we used to go together, we used to go to clean their house for the holidays, for after Shabbat. Sunday morning, I went with her when we lived separately, the apartment in another street. We used to go away, and our father's suit was laid out on the table and brushed clean what he was wearing to shul. That was the same suit that he got married into, but that suit was always brushed clean, put away for the next Shabbat. And we took out the rug, the little runners from the house. We had, the floor was colored, a red, not like a dark maroon color, paste waxed. And it was shining, and we had runners going through the floor. So Sunday morning, we take all this thing, we shake it out, brush it out, and clean. It was wood floor, so you didn't use water, but we had mops or something. I remember we just had to clean, and it was, we did make the whole house cleaned up after the, from Shabbat meals and guests coming and kids coming in. My friends used to come over after meals Shabbat. And, my parents would lay down and take a nap after meals Saturdays. But we young kids, we used to get changed into our nicer clothes, and we would go with our girlfriends and my boyfriends, and we would just go to a park, or we get together in somebody's house. I had my girlfriends, my sister had her girlfriends, my brother. And my brother belonged to the Shomer Tzayir, a Jewish organization. I didn't, but we used to know those Israeli songs, Hebrew songs that my brother was singing, and we just, we had 2 parks in our city, and we would just get together, my sister used to go to the library, I used to go with her too. And even though we had a big library of Jewish books, but we needed to read Polish because the schools were in Polish. And amongst us, we always spoke Yiddish. At home, we always spoke Yiddish. But in school, the teachers required of us to speak a good Polish, and all the subjects were in Polish. So I remember the principal sometimes would bawl us out, and I heard you on the street, you were speaking Yiddish. You're supposed to speak Polish, that's how you're going to learn to read correctly, talk correctly. Of course, a lot of people, had accents because they didn't use much Polish language. But the school was required. At 7 years, you had to be in school. It was the law.
So in school you spoke Polish, at
Yeah.
home you spoke Yiddish.
Yiddish.
And
with friends with.
And Hebrew, or
No Hebrew. We didn't speak Hebrew, but I learned, my in Poland. I mean, in our city, when a boy used to get right from the beginning. I think when he was 3 years old, there was teachers that they will form, like they had 3 or 4 or 6 boys, and they teach them how to Hebrew. They had to learn how to daven, how to read the Bible, and to say it, but they didn't teach them what it really means, but they had to read it correctly and say it correctly and know when and where to say what. But they started them off, and they were just 3 years old. They would go in, I think for 2 hours or 3 hours a day, and they would study with them, and it was very boring for the kids, but they learned. But the girls, very few families were educating the girls in Yiddish, but I know my father they sent me to a woman that she had children. In fact, I used to watch her little baby while she was watching the cooking, but she was teaching me how to read and write Yiddish. And of course we were speaking Yiddish, but to read Yiddish and to write Yiddish is different. So I learned how to read and write Yiddish, but then, so my mother stopped me from going anymore, because I must have been costly or something, I don't know how much she paid. But I know that they felt that I know enough to read and write Yiddish, so they didn't bother me to go anymore. But after a while, I forgot how to read, and how to read Yiddish. So my father picked up from our own books a small little book, a narrow book. It was not a thick book, and it was a romance story. And he told me to read that, and I was struggling to refresh my reading. And it was a young romance, and it got me. I was that time maybe 15 years old or 14 something. So it got me so, because at that age you read a romance, sort of romanticize yourself. So I got so interested that I was reading it, and the more I was reading it, the more I got into it. So at the end, I started to read big books. I mean, real books that we had, the history of the Jewish, of David's, books. We had, I think, maybe 10 thick books and very beautiful, what you call it, bound, yeah. And we had from certain books. That was a lot of, it took me a long time, but I was interested. That was the history of King David. And I started, I think I was, by the war broke out, I think I was in the 3rd or the 4th book, but I felt pride that I was, able to read such a intense history, which history is usually boring.
And so what exactly was the role compared to your mother and your father? Were they equal in the business, or?
Yeah, well, I tell you, my father was the one who would get up and he opened the store, and he would be there. My mother would get up after we went to school. I don't remember my mother getting up to fix us to go to school. My older sister and I, we were very close in age, and she was 2 years older. But we did whatever, she did her part and I did my part, and we went away to school. And then my mother would get up with the 2 younger children. I guess maybe eventually my younger brother was finally going to school. And then she went down to the store, and she stayed the whole day down in the store. She was there helping him if there was something in the store that he needed help, if it was getting busier. She made the ice cream. She boiled the milk, and she knew what to make the flavors and stuff. She prepared the juices with all kinds of flavors and colors in jars. There was a little that you turn up and you fill it with seltzer water and make nice drinks. And she was the one that was also shopping for groceries that we didn't have in our store. Whatever we're going to be needing, if she needed flour or butter or something like that. So she would buy, and then she was preparing the main meal of the day. but she was also sewing, and she was also repairing and turning over clothes, and a lot of things she was doing that, to make a household. She was doing a lot of, fixing up things that, we didn't have toys, things like you, but she was making our life that, for some reason, we were not missing in anything. We were very, we made our own little ball from rags, and we were very happy to play with it. If somebody got a real little ball, that was very, very wonderful. But it wasn't like we were envious that, this girl has a real ball and I don't. But we were, as far as my father and my mother, I never heard a crossword from my father to tell my mother anything. To me, it was like a really perfect, partnership, because it was difficult times when the kids were young. I was told that I was very sick when I was a baby, because she had a woman, the apartment was 3 blocks away from the previous store, not the last one. And she had to be with my father. So she had a Gentile woman tending on me, because the older one was going to the rabbi, to the studying with that was teaching them Hebrew. And my older sister, maybe she was already in school, but I don't remember now when, but I was told when I was a baby, I was very sick. She neglected me. She didn't diaper me and right, she didn't feed me when she was born, and I was very sick, so my mother had to fire her, and she took me to her doctor. My mother was always on top of things. She never neglected a child's health, so she would go to her doctor, and she would to take the care of herself, and she would just bring me over to be near her, near the store, and watch me, and arrange for a woman, I was told the story, to bring every day a fresh egg. A woman had a chicken, and she was laying it, and every day to a fresh egg for me, and that sort of nourished me back to health, because I was very sick.
Sorry, and what are your siblings' names? I forgot to ask.
Well, my oldest brother is Leo. It was Label in Europe, Label. Now it's Leo. He lives in Detroit. And I had my older sister lives in Israel, and her name was Bronya. And the younger one from my brother in Detroit is Mark Mordechai, and my sister's name was Rivka.
And your younger sister, she's in Detroit too?
She lives in Detroit.
Oh, okay. And can you describe your school a little bit?
Well, the school when I started at school, it was a brand new building. When my brother and sister, older brother and sister were going, I remember one time just running up, it was in a regular apartment building that people had apartments, maybe in certain part of that building, but it was on steps up. I remember one time just running up, it was in that same block that we had our quarters, but it was a different side of that block. But by the time when I had to start first grade, we started at 7 years, first grade. We didn't have kindergarten or pre-kindergarten, but first grade, everybody had to go to school at 7 years. Even from the farms, they made them walk to the cities to get to school. But I remember that they built a school for Jewish children, and it was in the outskirts of the city. And there was a public school, and it only was until the 7th grade. And it was for Jewish boys and girls until the 5th grade. 5 and 6 and 7 was just girls, and they took the boys out because it was not enough enough room for everybody to go to the 5th and 6th grade. So they took the boys and they sent them to the Gentile boys. There was also a public school for just Gentile boys, and there was another public school for just Gentile girls. But they took my older brother into this school with the Gentile boys. So I remember there was a big conflict, because when my brother, I remember telling this, I don't know if I have that much memory of that, that they made the Gentile boys, when they're coming to school, they had to stand on their knees, and there's the Mother Maria, and they have to wear a hat, no, wear a hat, they don't wear hats, and they have to say, their prayers, and Jewish people not allowed to do that. So there was a big conflict about that. So I remember that my father and another few parents of these boys that were forced to do, were supposed to do that, went to the rabbi, and with the rabbi's, authority, they went to see the principal from the Gentile boys' school, and they explained to them that this is against our religion, and they accommodated that the Jewish boys don't have to do that, they don't have to say the prayers in the morning. And not only this, the Jewish boys didn't have to study the Christian religion, but they had the teacher, the same teacher that was teaching us the Jewish religion, about Adam and Eve, and all of the Jewish history. They were teaching them too on a Sunday. Because the Christians were having Saturday religion, and the Jewish kids had a special class that the same teacher that was teaching us in the Jewish school was teaching the Jewish boys in the Gentile school on a Sunday. They had the classes there, so they were able to teach them, and I think it was a big success, because it was a big problem. It would mean a lot for the Jewish parents that the children were meant to, but for some reason it was an understanding. It wasn't that it came to, clashes or anything like that. And I don't know if it was because we were known in the city, because a lot of these teachers from that school used to come to our store to buy chocolate. They used to sell those bonbonnières, and then they go to a date or something, they would come and buy a nice box of chocolate, or just to buy something special in our store. So they knew my father, so he had maybe a little bit of respect for that, our belief, and somehow. And after that, the classes following later were following the same principle, that the Jewish kids were having, a special privilege there, that they were not forced to say the prayer before the cross.
There weren't any of the Christian kids in your school?
No, but the teachers, we had Gentile teachers, yeah, and the principal was a Christian man, a nice man, but a Christian man.
Should we do an introduction again? Sorry. So can you just state your birth name? Is Leikach your married name?
Leikach. Yes, yeah. My family name is Wygoda, Wygoda, and in Poland I was Hanna, C-H-A-N-A, Hanna Wygoda. And of course I was married in Baltimore. Not in Baltimore, in Detroit, but I came to live after I was married to Baltimore. I lived in Detroit. I came to Detroit after the war because my family, my mother had two brothers in Detroit. Oh. My parents were killed a year after the war in Poland, trying to get out of there. So when they found out that my parents were killed, we were actually supposed to go to Palestine. My father was a Zionist, and there was no Israel then. But they were killed, survived the war, 5 kids, and them to with a lot of difficulties to have, but because we were a family, we came to difficulties and all kinds of problems. But we survived and came to Poland, and then we find out that what happened we didn't know when we were in Russia that what was going on, because in Russia they don't have anything that, the press doesn't write what was going on, what Hitler was doing. We didn't know. When we came back, we assumed that, we will tell everybody how we were surviving, how we were having all the difficulties in Russia. They will be so surprised. But when we came home to Poland, not to home, we never even went to our home city, because we were evicted from our city. In one day, all the Jewish people from our city were in one day evicted from our homes without any explanation. They just came in to the rooms, to apartments, to businesses until you're out of house, and then walked us through the city streets. Old people, babies, sick people, invalids, doesn't matter. Everybody into the outskirts. It was a park and near a bridge that led out of the city, and we sat on the grass all day long. That lasted, because from all neighborhoods they were bringing Jews in all day long, and then there was the little hut that the gardener that people took in the garden, and that little hut German soldiers took in, on one side of that rooms there were soldiers checking women, and in the next side was for men, and the soldiers were telling you to open up and take away whatever you had, rings or earrings or a watch or anything of value. They checked your pockets, and they searched you, to whatever you had of value. They would just take it away and then tell you to go. And some of them were more gentle, some of them were very brutal. And then they chased us up to the bridge, and the bridge was leading us out of the city, and we never saw our hometown anymore. And the roads, we were traveling by foot until the closest village, and wherever we would stop, we didn't know what kind of war it's going to be, because it was just, as a matter of fact, the war broke out September the 1st, and the 26th of September, which was yesterday, I think, the day before, was the day when was Erev Sukkot, when we were chased out from our home, and since then we were homeless. And after that, we were just wherever we would stop on the way, on the open roads, you just go on foot. And the nights were cold, September nights were cold. We were trying to find some place of shelter. If there was a farm somewhere, we would just try to, sometimes there was abandoned farms, because the farmers were, I don't know what that land was, because some of them were, I think, Volksdeutsche, which means they were actually Germans that were living in Poland. I don't know if they maybe for Polish citizens, and they had farms. Jewish people, very few had farms, lived in the farms. But they were supposed to come in to take over the Jewish homes, in the city. And we came to a couple places that were abandoned farms, and we thought, well, maybe we'll be able to sit here until the war will end. We didn't know it was going to take a long time, because it was just before even get us, when they chased us out, it was just in a few weeks' time they chased us out. So we didn't even see any ghettos yet, but whenever we would stop for a day or two or night, they would just come through a car or a bicycle, a motorcycle or a truck, and tell us, all the newcomers, if there was a farm or a little town, they would just tell us that all the newcomers have to leave right now the city, and the people that live there tomorrow, next day. But we kept chased all the time from place to place until the part that Russia occupied, because in 1939 Hitler made a pact of non-aggression with Stalin, and Stalin was allowed to occupy part of Poland, so that Stalin would not give Hitler any problems with fighting him on this side, because he wanted to occupy Poland and Czechoslovakia, Hungary, and all the rest. So he made an agreement with Russia, so that he was safe on this side of the border. And so Russia occupied part of Poland without war. The Germans came in with a motorized army with airplanes shooting from the airplanes so low that you could see the people walking in the roads. But the Russians came in peacefully without any warring. The part that my husband lived was part of Ukraine, and that was occupied by the Russians. And so when we came, we were chased, so we were walking every time, different little towns, little cities, until we came to the part that was occupied by the Russian part, the Russian army, the Russian soldiers. But I remember we went out to the bridge, and one side was the Nazis, the Germans post, and after the other side of the bridge was a Russian, and he would say, "Idите do nas, my nie Niemcy," in Russian, and just come to us, we're not Germans. And they were pleasant, they were friendly, they didn't help us, but they didn't stay with the gun and with the, scaring us. So and since then, we came to, that was smaller towns, but finally got to our biggest town, to Białystok, which was our main city. Do you want to know the story from during the time of the war, or you want to just?
I was
Until-
liking hearing, up until the war. So your parents' names were?
Dvora, my mother's name was, my mother's name was Dvora, I forgot that. Dvora, like Dvora, and my father's name was Abraham Gershon Vigoda.
Okay. And you were born in 23?
August 11th, 1923.
Okay. And so you were talking about your school, and did you have religious lessons in the Jewish school?
Yeah,
Or?
we had a Jewish religious subject. The teacher would come, it was the same teacher that was teaching in every grade, and also the
Like
Jewish
Hebrew
boys.
school
Yeah,
now?
but not Hebrew, he was teaching us, the Jewish history.
Okay.
Just history, who was King David, who was King Solomon, what they did, what was at that time, how was he treating, what the situation was. So we didn't go in very deep, but because, it was only 1 hour, I don't know if it was 1 hour every week or maybe 1 hour every second week, I don't remember now the schedule. But we had, our school was really a nice new school. We had a very big playground, and I remember we had a very nice gym, that I loved gym, and we also had we had between the classes, we had I think it was 10 minutes, when the bell rings.
Like in between classes?
Yeah, so, but there was one, I think there was after every class was 10 minutes, after I think 40 minutes a class, and then it was 10 minutes a break. But then they had 20 minutes, that was lunchtime, that we were able to have our lunch. And we also had, I remember when you were, I think in the 6th grade probably, or maybe, the 6th grade, we had a little store that was sort of like, one of the teachers was in charge with that, but she had some volunteers from our class, a few girls that were during that lunch break, that was the big break, the 20 minutes. So we used to go and open up that store. We had a key to that. And we were there selling like pencils and, erasers or paper or something that you may have needed, and you run out, you didn't have time to go prepare it. So we would just, and we were accountable for that, we knew what we were selling, and I think once in a week or once in a month, we would come to the teacher's house, to her home, and we would bring all the paper, whatever the business that we took in, the money, and we were responsible for that. So I remember at one time, I don't know if I was doing it for a long time, but I remember me and another girl were, in charge of that, and it was fun. I enjoyed doing that, even though it cut my lunch break, but, it was, because we felt like we're doing something. We had, what else? We had even some plays, we put out some little plays for certain times, I don't know, certain writers or something. I remember I was in a play which I did very bad. I was so embarrassed, I came in before I said my part and I was done. So I wasn't very successful, but it was, we tried to put us in a certain place to make it some more interesting and engaging us in, I guess to be creative or something.
So you liked gym?
I loved gym. I was very good at sports, and also we had a choir from every grade, from every class. The teacher, there was one music teacher, and he would pick up singers we didn't play an instrument, but we were just a choir. So he would pick some of the best singers, and we had a choir, we had practice, and we were also in competition with different schools from the whole area, from different schools, from the villages, from the towns. And I remember that our school took first place. It was in the marketplace, the competition. One time we put out a play in the theater, in the city theater. And I was dancing there. I was having a part in dancing. And I was in Poland this time. I went in the theater, it's still there. And I thought I knew where the building was, and I went in, I saw some, they had posters of, Fiddler on the Roof and stuff like that. I told them, is that still active? Do you have, they say, yes, they have plays and, something's going on. We had this theater, we had also, and that was also a movies, not always it was theater, but when it was, some Jewish groups were coming by from different cities, very good performers, they were putting out good plays, Jewish plays in our town. And, most of the Jewish population used to go, and it was, I don't remember how much was a ticket, but it was very nice plays that performed. And we also had, from sport activities, I remember we had also competition that our school was involved in. We were taking some, good, we were getting good, performances. I don't remember if we took best, but I remember in singing, I remember that our choir took first grade, I just remember.
And what sports did you play?
What sport?
Yeah.
I remember this, what do you call it here, that, we just.
Basketball?
Not basketball. There was a basketball, but I don't remember playing basketball. Yeah, this.
Volleyball?
Volleyball, yeah,
Oh.
a lot of volleyball. And I don't remember now what kind of games, but we had a lot of activities, and we had a very nice gym that was really, with a lot of modern equipment there. I remember we climbed up on the walls and throw my body back, and it was very, it was, and for some reason we also did hand work, with our needle point, and we had to buy material from the farmers, their sacks, and bleach it out so it was white. We made our own dress, I had our own, put in design and embroidered. We did a lot of embroidering. This was with handiwork, that was part of it. But we liked it. That was what we used to decorate our homes with, put them on art and our own work on the walls, decorate. It wasn't like you go out to buy some paintings. So maybe some, people that could afford it to do that, but most, people live, some people live very poorly. They had a lot of children. There was a shoemaker, a tailor, 20 tailors in every street. So there was not that much sewing that people needed to do. But so there were a lot of people, but some people were living better than others. But so there were a lot of poor people living there. But somehow everyone was respectful. I remember it was when it's the holiday that we need to give shalach munus, so my mother used to always send out baskets. She made me carry to a woman that lived very far away, and I didn't like to go there. She made me go. She says, and this is very important, only today you can do. She's a very poor lady, she has children, she's very poor, she's a widow, and she would not allow anybody give her anything during the year. But today she has to accept it, so we should put in all kinds of stuff, and I would just take it up. She had to take it, she wouldn't tell me no, she doesn't mind. So, and then we were just sending to friends, nice things. Friends were sending us nice things, some special fruit or sometimes something special, baked thing or something, so just to honor somebody, just to make somebody feel, certain holidays, we did that. For Sukkot was very much fun too. Like we were a lot of people. In our building was 56 tenants. I think only 3 Gentiles. I think the baker, and one that made sausages, and I think I remember one more. I think the keeper, the property keeper. So, but most of them were Jews, and they, like 2-3 families would get together and build a sukkah. So, and then you carried down, only the men were sitting, eating in the sukkah, and the women, the girls, the children were carrying down. And then, it was a lot of fun building the sukkah and showing up. You made the nicest kugel and all that kind of stuff. It was on a small scale, but it was like here, somebody showing up, they had a new Cadillac or whatever. But they showed off small things, but it meant the same, principle. They enjoyed it. They felt pride, about it. So, it didn't have to be very big things, but small things meant a lot.
And so besides gym, what did you think of like the rest of school? Were there classes that you liked, classes you didn't?
Yeah,
Did you have like math and stuff?
yeah, I wasn't very crazy about math, but I was passing grades. I liked Polish and compositions. I was always very good in writing compositions and how you spelled your vacations. But I wasn't good in art. I remember we had to make a map of all the rivers or something in the Polish map. And I knew I was not going to make it good. And my older brother was very good in that. So I was nagging my brother to do it. He says, no, if I'll do it, you're not going. But I was still crying to my mother, so she says to she persuaded my brother to paint it, and because I got a very good grade mark for it. I felt that I was not right until today. I felt like I cheated because it was my vanity. I wanted to get a good, but I was afraid that I'm not going to make it good. I'm going to make it sloppy, and I wanted it to be good. But he was crying. He says, if I make it, how is she going to learn? But that was as far as our argument between children were. He did it because my mother asked him to, so he did it.
And your friends?
Friends, we had our, friends that we were close with. Some of them were just friends that you see in school, but some of them that you did your homework with. And sometimes I did it in her house. I think 1 or 2 friends that I was doing homework with together. And when we finished with the homework, we would just try to play something. And, if it was in my house, then we would sometimes they would just enjoy wrapping candy with us or just, playing cards. We made our own cards, we made our own games, and that's how we entertained ourselves. And we also learned a lot, like we had a game of all the writers, and each writer what kind of books he read, how he wrote, and we had to learn and try to read these books because we were interested, because he wrote such good books. So we wanted to get more acquainted, not just play cards with these names, but so that sort of nourished our brain with certain writers, whether we were reading the books or not. But that was one of the games, and we played domino and and things like that too. My father played chess, and he was a very good chess player. And when my older brother started to play chess with my father, but sometimes in the store sitting wasn't very busy. He would just play a game of chess. And the kids, we sort of find was to do, but to entertain ourselves. So if we didn't have televisions, natural, of course, but we played, anything was a game. You find a piece of glass that was a certain color, so that was something you play, hopscotch and stuff like that. So that was also something that you did. We used to take walks into the park and to the library. We had a very nice Polish library that we take books out. My sister used to read more than I did, and maybe she was older, so she was reading more Polish. But until today, we were speaking about learning Yiddish. Until today, I can read and write Yiddish. but years ago, we used to write more letters. Now we pick up the phone and we call. I'm in Israel, I used to, for Rosh Hashanah, I used to send up 50, 60 Rosh Hashanah cards, and it wasn't just to sign my name, because if I was writing to my cousins or uncles in Israel or to somewhere, so you had to write a whole letter, not just to sign your name. But now you pick up the phone and you call and you talk to them, so you slowly, I'm beginning to think that it's disappearing. The people that read and write Yiddish are, just, getting very small, the amount of people that do that. But it feels good to know a language, like if my father wouldn't insist that give me to read that little book. After that, I started to read the Yiddish newspaper. My father used to get a Yiddish newspaper. And it was a series of a spy story going on in that paper. And I used to be so curious when the paper would come, and I was trying to get the paper to read the continuation, what I was yesterday, the story, how it ended yesterday. So all of that made me, because I started to read Yiddish. And until today, I do read Yiddish, but and I'm writing, but Yiddish still, but it's beginning to, I feel like I used to write to Israel because they don't read the English. I mean, now they do, but in those days I didn't read English. So I had, I was writing Yiddish letters, and I felt somehow I feel now that it was nice. My mother had a sister in Israel, and she used to correspond with that sister. So when we visited the sister in Israel, she doesn't live anymore now, but when she was alive, she had a stack of letters from my mother, and she treasured it somehow. So we wanted her to let us take it home to her. We were just in Israel for a couple of weeks, so we wanted to take it home to translate it so that my children would be able to read it, what my mother, their grandmother, wrote to her sister to Israel in Yiddish. So I think my brother, I have a book that my oldest brother in Detroit, she allowed him to take this book. She was afraid that was lost. She felt like that was a treasure because her sister doesn't live. She was killed, and she has her handwriting. Nowadays people don't make a big deal about it. You just put it in trash. But it was sentimental about things like that in Europe, and it meant something. And then my brother bound it into a book, and I have it. I don't know. If my children will want to read that, it's translated from this Yiddish page into an English page. What did my mother write to her sister in Europe, before the war? But it's getting more and more difficult for people to use that, to write Yiddish or to read Yiddish. There's still a Jewish paper. My husband used to still subscribe to a Yiddish paper when he was alive. And now, used to be several Jewish papers in America circulating, but slowly, because the older people that read Yiddish are dying, and the younger generation don't use it.
So they wouldn't let you speak Yiddish in school, though? Yeah.
No, we had to use Polish. Of course, between the girls we were speaking it. It was always easier to speak Yiddish, but we had to use the Polish language, And of course, we had a store, so we were using more Polish than maybe other people that didn't have a business. They were not exposed to it, but we had a business, so the Jewish customer would come and he would speak Yiddish to us.
And after school, you would leave with your friends and go to your homework?
First, we have to do home. Yeah, sometimes we would have some kind of special. If we had a friend of mine that she had all the siblings, and they were playing guitar. It was mandolin, and they were older, so they were getting together, boys and girls, and we were just sitting and enjoying the music, and we were in the next room and we were just enjoying it because we were too young to be in the group of them, but we had our own entertainment, you know. We used to get together and we would sing, and we just didn't care if anybody heard us or not. But we sing Polish songs, we sing Hebrew songs, Yiddish songs, and of course sometimes my father would read to us a very nice poem of somebody. So if I wanted my friends, if I was impressed with it, I would just read this book. My father would be very, very happy if he would see me do that. Read something from this book to my friends, because my father was very interested in Weizmann and all this, you know, people that were working to establish a Jewish homeland, and so we were inspired, and that's why I came to America through a kibbutz. Actually, we were in a kibbutz. The kibbutz were made to Palestine, but after my parents killed, we came to America because my mother's brothers sent us papers and was pleading with us to come to America, so we decided to go. But my older sister didn't want to. She went to Israel, and she still lives in Israel. She has a nice family there. It was great-grandchildren. They're very nice. I mean, she's not a rich woman, but she's a very happy, you know, a very nice family. Wonderful children and grandchildren. It's very much respect and love.
And where in Israel does she live?
In Israel, she lives in Tivon. It's not far from Haifa. And she has her children, some of them live near Jerusalem, and they're all spread in. My husband has a brother with children and grandchildren in Israel. Some of them in Jerusalem, so he lives in Lud. You know, they were grown. Since before Israel, when Israel was established, we came to America in 1948. I think when Israel became a country, voted in the United Nations to be a country. So I felt like it was when we were, I think, on the boat when Israel was declared its independence. Yeah.
So you said your brother was in a Jewish organization growing
We go on
up.
Shomer Tzayir. That was a Zionist organization.
Right.
Yeah.
Were you a member of any, were you involved in that
No.
kind of stuff?
I was not in any organization, no. I felt like I was just so busy with so many, so busy. But for some reason, I was friends with some of my friends were belonging there. So we were singing and doing the same things, only we did it in our private, in our own house. But I was not part of the organization.
And you talked a little bit about a typical Shabbat at your house.
Yeah.
But were holidays any different, or what did you do especially for holidays?
Well, if in the holidays, if it was like a Rosh Hashanah or Yom Kippur, my mother would go to shul too. And we, as kids, we used to come to my mother's, it was a main big shul, and the women's section was on the second floor, overlooking the men's section. So girls would go up to my mother's shul, and she had, it was called a shtutz, she had her seat that my father paid for, and it was a very nice, very close to the, to the front row. It was the front row that you could overlook to see the rabbi and see my father and my brothers. The boys were going with my father. But the girls, so we would come up and just fool around, play around. Then we would go in the playground, the field near the synagogue. And we waited for mother to come out, and then my father would come to shul service ended. So my father would walk out, and they walked together. My mother would rush home because we had to, make sure that the dinners. And we used to, we have that person, they told me that who was cleaning the bed but came to the house to light the fire. He would come in the morning, and before my mother went to shul, he would light a fire. So it was in a small fire, safely put away to warm up the food. So when we would come from shul, we would have the main meal. And if we had children, so that was put in Friday before Shabbat, And then after you come from school, everybody would go to this bakery, and they didn't have anybody in particular, but whoever was handy would take the pots out from the oven, from the, the big oven, and he set it down inside, and everybody knew his pot, whoever it was, a certain color or something wrapped around, and you bring it home, and then we would have, that was, some of them were making from potatoes, some different things that put some meat in it, and some kind of grains or beans or something. But you had gefilte fish, and you had chicken soup with noodles, and then you have made some chopped liver or whatever. Some bit some kids liked it. I'm sometimes astounded at how many different things my mother would make. A little bit of this and a little bit of that, and everything had to be done from the scratch. But it was done because, she wanted it to be like a festive meal. During the week, we didn't have very much time to make a festive meal. It was still a cooked meal, but it wasn't, of course, my mother would first set the plate at the table, and my father would come in from the store, and she would stay in the store while he was eating the meal. And then he would go back to the store, and then my mother would come, and the children would come from school, from homework, and we would eat it. But it wasn't a set-down meal time like on a holiday or a Saturday. But Saturdays and holidays was always meal time. But we used to close, of course, Friday night, and my father would come upstairs and wash up and change, put in the Yom Tov suit, the holiday suit, and a white shirt with a tie and a yarmulke, and go away to shul and take the boys. And then he would come and would have the main meal, and we would all fall asleep, but my parents probably went to sleep too. They must have all been tired, I don't remember. And of course, Saturday, my father would go to shul with the boys, and my mother would, if it's just on Saturday, she would just sleep a little bit longer. And she'd get up, and my sister and I cleaned the dining room, and it was one room, the dining room and the bedroom. It was a big room. It was my mother's two big nickel beds, and they had mattresses, which was very unusual. So that was my father's and mother's bed. It was in the same room that we were having a big table, but it was like no, so I don't think like that much, but maybe like this all around. So that was that was the bed, and then it was still some space, and then it was a table, and then you had a beautiful plant and 2 windows. We had a sofa, some nice sofa, and there was a dresser with some mirrors, some beautiful pictures, and we had with all kinds of crystals that was left over from the business that we used to have that we didn't sell. Some nice china cups that we saved for Passover time. We used to have that. And then the table was a big table, and my father would sit on a Saturday. It was just us, but if it was on a holiday, or sometimes you had big guests, sometimes you had family that were, just visiting. My grandfather was come, my mother's stepfather, he would come from a different city. He would spend with us. So after dinner, we would just take up the dishes and wash them. My sister and I get the dishes washed. And my father and mother would just rest, went to sleep. And we would just change after, because we were not wearing for the washing the dishes. We would clothes, but we put our clothes, and I would went out and see my girlfriends. And we were just spending until the evening when my father opened the store. Then we would just sort of congregate in the store area, the big room there, because it was people coming in into the sun, a lot of light. The store was lit up. We had a radio in the store that was, and it was a lot of activities. People were happy the Shabbat was over. Some of them came in to buy some, candy or chocolates or cakes. We had our ice cream. It was summertime to get ice cream. We had a little room what we used to have before, the billiard table, but that was not profitable. We gave it up, but we made that partition. We put in a few little tables with chairs, and customers would come by, like if somebody had a date with sometimes a soldier with a girl or some Jews. They would come in and they would go in. It was in the back of the back counter. It was two steps to go into that little partition room. It was a partition, and it had a curtain, so they would have the privacy. And they would order some ice cream, and we would make it in very nice little dishes, and put in the kind and bring it into them on a tray, and they would just sit and eat and have a conversation. That they had a private whatever. It wasn't just one little table. I think we had like 4 or 5 little tables with chairs, and that was a very nice thing because a lot of them used to spend the evening. You know, they would have a date, or they would have an ice cream, or maybe after the movies they would come and have an ice cream. So it was more, lively for us to be in our store than at my girlfriend's, because over there it would be a little bit boring after Shabbat, So most of the time it was, and then we were congregating a lot on the street because we were the main street the street from the city that a lot of people would just stroll. This was the way to spend the time. It wasn't like you couldn't write on a holiday or Shabbat, and there was no way some people had bicycles, but you don't ride a bicycle on Shabbat either. So, but it was just most people were walking. We just walked to visit. Most of the time, families visit each other, and we kids, we were just playing around. Whatever somebody had an idea, we did. We jumped, played, sing, dance, whatever. And then we got tired. We came home. At a certain time we needed to be home. We couldn't just go away and come home at 1 o'clock in the morning. Because I think, as a matter of fact, in our city, 11 o'clock the lights went out in the city. I believe it was 11 o'clock. So we had to be, our store lights even went out, but we had to be home before that because we had to take the younger kids upstairs to be with them. And that sort of gave us time to calm down, no games. I mean, you could play a card game, but not to, just to relax and get ready for bedtime. Just look through your homework if there is anything that you didn't do during the day or something special. Or just, takes, just spend some time with your mother, talk things over, whatever. If you wanted to have something fixed or repaired, a pair of shoes we needed for the winter, what style you wanted, we used to go and pick up a style, and she would have it made. The shoemakers even, we had it made.
And so besides your mom's sister that was living in Israel, did your mother and father have other siblings?
My father lived in the same town. So it was a father, my father's mother and father, and there were a younger brother and a younger 2 sisters. One of the sisters married and moved into another city. One of the sisters lived in our hometown, and the younger brother got married and he also lived in our hometown. But my mother had one sister that lived in our hometown, and then in the same town that she comes from, she had over there a stepfather. I never met my grandmother, and her father died when she was the only child when her father died. He was 19 years old. He had only one child, that was my mother, and my grandmother remarried, and her husband became our grandfather. He was a very loving man. We were not in very good relationship with my father's family because there was a conflict of competition. They were very resentful why my father became a candy maker. He was the older one, and that's all that he knew what to do, because as the oldest he was working with the grandfather. But when he got married, and for some reason they couldn't get along because there were different class of people. They were very primitive, education didn't mean very much. It would be too costly. It's not, you don't have to learn Polish, you just, it would just be, very limited. And my father was a very enlightened man. He wanted education. And so he and my mother come from another class of people, so they were very much more intellectually, grown up. I mean, involved. But my great step grandfather was very loving, and we just loved to go to visit him when it was vacation time. My sister and I, my mother would dress us up and make us very nice little outfits with hats, and put us on a little, it was like a small bus. It was a special transport that was going, like maybe 10 or 12 people would get on it, and it was going between our town and that town, the Shells. And for some reason, they must have written a note or a letter, because my aunt, the one that moved later to Israel, she was that time a single girl. She lived with my grandfather. So she would wait for us when we would arrive, and she gave us, we had a wonderful time. We spent sometimes vacation time. We spent a week or two in that town. And over there lived another two brothers of my mother's, and one was sister. And it was visiting with them, but my mother's the youngest sister, she was a young girl, and she would give us a fun time, take us to parks and walk with me and myself, just having a lot of good times. And of course, then when it was time for us to go back, she would put us on that little thing, and my mother would wait for us when we came in. And we enjoyed it. I think that was some vacation time. And if that was at one time, but I remember later, when my older sister got a little more older, she was mature enough that we could entrust her. So my mother would rent a cottage in the farm across the bridge, which was, I don't know how the distance. I mean, it was, I don't know. Sometimes I'll look up and see what is the difference than the closest village, and the farmers would rent out cottages. So we would rent that, and it was a good walk. But my mother either my mother or my father would come. We would be there, just the four children. My oldest brother was staying home, was staying in the business with my father. But my older sister, I, and my two younger kids were staying there all the time. We lived there for the duration of the vacation, I think 2 months vacation. But either my mother or my father would come out every evening. They walked, they cooked something during the day, and she would bring out all cooked meals, even though we had, when we were moving out, we had some material, stuff that we could make a breakfast, a lunch, even a very limited meal, my sister and I, but we were able to take care of ourselves. But for the night, my mother or my father would walk out and bring something cooked, but my mother made something special, and stayed with us. He would sleep over, and the next morning, he would walk back to the home, to the store, to the business. And that's how life was going on in summertime. And for Shabbat, Friday morning, whoever stayed overnight, Thursday night, Friday morning, I think it was either me or my sister and the younger brother, walked with my parents to the city, and we helped my mother to go do the shopping and the cooking and the baking and the packing it all up, and come out Friday night before Shabbat started with cooked stuff. She sometimes got what you call it, a coach, a horse and buggy with, with just put some stuff on it, and put all the hot stuff, and it was just cooked and baked stuff. We filled the fish and everything, and bring it out to the village, to the house that we were there. It was, I think, one room. We had a little foyer, and we had a fence around it. It was the woods, the forest was right in front of us. It was very good air. It was very nice trees, very good fresh air. And so because for vacation she wanted us to be out of the city, and we were old enough to be safely there. But for the night, somebody grown up was always. But Friday night she came, and Saturday morning my father and my brother would get up and go to shul in the city, and after shul, they walk to the farm, to the village where we were all, and when they came in, we all had our meal, and after that, they would just go lay down. They had lunch chairs, we walked into the forest around the trees, and there were other people that had little cottages nearby. We kids went to play with balls and stuff, and the parents were sitting down and they, relaxing, and sometimes they would just, falling, take a nap, and they had hammocks, that they were. And then when it was time for the night, my father and my brother would go back to the city because there had to be somebody sleeping, the store, the living quarters. So somebody had to be there too for security. I don't know if we had any, I never remember being robbed or anything, because everybody knew everybody. It was not like passing through town, but it was just for security there, and somebody had to sleep near the store with the stores, and someone upstairs. And then the next morning, they stayed, but my mother slept over with us, and the next morning she would go to her town and be with them. So sometimes they needed to make candies, but it was always my older brother and my mother and father was most there, but they would come. One of them would always come to stay, and that was until the war broke out.
And how far apart was like your mom's family's town and your town?
My mother's town.
Yeah, like if you said you would go visit them, how far?
Yeah, I don't know the mileage, the distance.
Like would it take,
it
all
was
day
like
or
no,
like
no,
an
no,
hour?
no, like 2 hours
Oh.
or a ride with their automobile. Sometimes he would break down, he had a flat tire,
Yeah.
so we had to wait until they're gonna go to the town. But mostly it was like, I think it was 2 hours ride. But it was so much fun, we were looking forward to it. But if we didn't go, we used to go, my sister and I would take something to crochet or to needlepoint. We would just take a blanket and we would just go out into the fields, past the bridge, they have open fields, past that river, that big river that was coming to under the bridge. And we would just spread out and we would just, do some handiwork. And I don't remember if you had a radio, I don't think so. No, we had a radio, it was in the store. But we just, we were just singing, playing, I don't remember. I know we were always having something to crochet or to needlepoint or to, something that we took along that we were working on during the summer time. Something that we would, accomplish to get something done, not to just be, lazy and stuff like that.
So I mean, you did talk about, holidays and your brothers and father going to shul and stuff, but did you ever go or no?
I don't think, I would just go just to play, wait until my mother would come out, and sometimes we would just go up to my mother's seat, and with my girlfriend had their parents, and then we would just go into the field that was around the synagogue, that was open fields. And we were just, playing, throwing the balls, where they had a ball, we were just playing something like very, it wasn't structured or anything, it was just, until they let out from the shul. When they let out from the shul, then we knew we had to go home because that was going to be the main meal. And usually everybody was at the time of the dinner, it wasn't like you could go to our friend and come back an hour later. Everybody, my friend also had to go to their families because everybody was having dinner after shul. And after shul, it's a Saturday or it's a holiday. So, but the holiday was more festive, and it was somehow special. And a Shabbat was, was just a normal, we had a nice meal. And sometimes my father would just, tell us something, if there was something going on in the world affairs that he was reading in the paper. He was telling us about it, or maybe showing us if some read the paper for that we would know what was going on. So he was trying, he really more for education than some of my friends' parents. He was more involved in that. So maybe that's why that he had a library. In fact, after the war, I met a man that told me about there was printed my book, and I bought it after the war that somebody, whatever, somebody had any important documents or remembered something from the war to contribute to it, and it was a very thick book. That you can bring it into me for a minute to show to them. That it was a very big, and in a lot of places, my father's name is mentioned there, and I even found a picture from my class that I didn't bring it in, but somebody must have found it and they brought it. This was the book from my
Oh, wow.
hometown. Yeah.
So-
Just to give you, this is the wrong way, my dear.
Yeah. I got that.
You started up this
Yeah.
way, yeah. And I wanted to show you, this is the map of the city. And, here is all the things that was going on. You see these numbers. And it shows you what is where our store was and stuff like that. But here is a lot of articles that people that lived in that town contributed to it.
Okay.
Some of them had documents that they used to put it in. Some of them had just memories of certain things. So, and a lot of it was here written something in Hebrew. So it depends who remembered what. And that was after the war. That was printed after the war. And somebody told me, I was at a New Year's time in Boston. Friends invited us for New Year's to spend with them together. And at the table that we were sitting, there was sitting a couple, and we started to ask each other, where do you come from? So I'm from near Warsaw. When I hear near Warsaw, then I'm already asking, what is the city near Warsaw? Because I am near Warsaw, and I know most of the little cities. So then when they told me Pultusk, I said, I am from Pultusk. That's when we started. I said, what is your name? He said Srebro, and the name Srebro sounded familiar, but I don't know, did I know it from Russia, or from Germany, or from America, from home? But it sounded familiar, so when we started to talk, what is my name? When I told him, he said, when the war broke out, he returned a book to my father that he had borrowed from us, and he told me that this book was printed, and he gave me an address in New York where this book can be bought. And my son happened to be living for a short time in New York, and I gave him the information, and he thought that was the last book. And when I got it, I was so excited. I was sitting up nights to read it. Can you imagine to go through that book? But of course, I never went through it. But I went a few places, and I found some places that my father was mentioned, that we had a candy, there were just 2 candy factories in Pultusk, and one of them, they mentioned my father's name. They mentioned also my father belonging to a Zionist organization. They mentioning some things about, I have a picture from my school that I recognize myself. I didn't submit it, I didn't have this kind of, but I recognized the teacher and the principal. So when I looked closer, I think that this picture is me. And but it's so many things that's so interesting to me here, because there's a lot of pictures that people gave in that, at that time, I now don't remember much. My memory is getting more faded out, but it was those years when I got this book, it was still fresh in my memory, and I was just so excited, I just couldn't put it down. And of course I told my brothers about it, so they tried to, but I think theirs was already they brought it, I think, from Israel, because they had, in Israel, they had some, I don't remember, there's some, Wiosna, that's a song. Wiosna, it's in Polish. It's good to know languages, but I spoke Russian and read and read Russian, but not now. While I was living there, I was speaking and reading and writing Russian just like I do English now. But I forgot it, it's, because it's not it was a foreign language. Polish, I was learning in school, so it's coming back to me. I'm not maybe so fluent in it, but I will be able to speak and read Polish. But Russian, I can speak a little bit, but I forgot how to read. I forgot how certain letters, what they mean, because the alphabet is a lot the same, but it's different. It means different certain letters. And that's why my husband still used to be able to read the Russian, because he came in that part from Ukraine. So over there, they were, although they were learning Polish in the schools, but they were also speaking with the villagers in Ukraine, and so that's why he used to be able to read Russian. I forgot. Before you were coming, I just took that book out and I was reading through the beginning of it, and I was telling my son about it. Here is writing one man that he was one of the people that were more involved in the city Jewish community, and he's writing that according to the Jewish law, when somebody dies, you put up a monument. It is monument. How do you put up a monument for a city of Jews that were killed? For whatever reason, some of them were killed in, some of them were killed died in Russia from hunger, from malaria, from starvation. But how do you put up a monument when a whole city is gone? Because when we came back from Russia to Poland, we didn't even go back to our hometown because it would be dangerous. It would still be anti-Semitic. It would still be dangerous. So we lived in Lodz, which was a big city, and it was a big concentration of all the Jews that remained, that survived, that came out of ghettos in the forest, people that was partisans, right? And also from Russia, a lot of people came back from Russia. Some people were hiding in all kinds of attics and basements and and all kinds of places. So they came out from different places, but they were afraid to get into smaller tunnels. But the anti-Semitism was still there. So we just stayed in the big city, and we were, trying to emigrate from there, because when we came, we found out that the Jews were being gassed and they were being killed. We didn't know that during the war. We expected to find our relatives in that Nashelsk. We had some people in different little towns. But we found out that there were none. They were all killed.
Yeah. Well, so I just wanted to say you had a close family, good friends.
Yeah.
Do you have boyfriends?
I did not. I was so very shy. I was 16. I was very embarrassed if a boy would look at me. That time he had 10-year-olds already, all about life, but I didn't know very much. I have to be honest about it. It wasn't like you would see on television, you read about these things. It was sort of like you find out from a girlfriend. You have an older girlfriend. She already had an older sister, and they tell you the secrets of what's going on. But I was very shy. I was very uninformed when the war broke out, to tell you the truth. But I had to get a brassiere, and I was so embarrassed because you had to go to a place where they were making them. It wasn't that you buy it in a store. And we were walked around back and forth that street, back and forth. That nobody shall see us walking into the store because they will not be going to make a bra. But it was a very limited life. Talking?
Yeah. Anything else?
Talk until tomorrow?
Maybe.
I think, what time is it this year?
It is now 7:20.
Oh, I think we should probably.
That's perfectly
Yeah,
fine.
yeah,
We've been
because
full
I
of
believe
information.
we need to do something. We were supposed to go. My daughter invited us for dinner today. What's going to be there. We were yesterday to our wedding, and we came home what time? Actually, it started at 5. We came home, must have been about 10:30 or so. But we were all bushed because I'd done so much. I'd never done so much in my life. I don't know, the music was so good. And now, just the tempo. And my feet was aching in the middle of the night. I had to go and put on enough cream. And
Who got married?
A cousin's daughter. My husband's first cousin's granddaughter.
Cool.
And she happened to be my son's best friend's daughter. Yeah, so we were in bed. We saw the rest of the family, which was not too many left. We used to have a big family, but unfortunately this family got smaller. But it was good to see. I mean, some of my son's friends that happened to be, this fathers of the bride friends. So some of them used to come when my son was a teenager in school, some school friends. So they were all glad to see me because they used to come to our house. And it was nice. And my daughter was there, my son was there, so it was very nice. And we had a very pleasant day. And in fact, he invited my son today to get together with some of his buddies. I think all of the people that were from out of town, they were supposed to have a dinner together. But I think we already missed that. I don't know. We were involved with the gutters today, so are you still recording all this what I'm telling you? It's so stupid.
Nice of you. Well, thank you so much
Yeah.
again for having us, and I don't know if we're going to see you again before you go on your trip or not.
Can you make it to be later, or does it have to be?
I have no idea, actually.
Yeah.
I've been speaking with Steve,
Yeah.
who's been really helpful.
And he was the one that was digging,
Yeah, I know, he's been harassing
my
you all
daughter,
He's been
yeah.
bugging you all weekend.
my daughter, and she says, "Mommy, you committed
I'm
yourself."
sorry.
And I said, "Gosh, I got so many things I have to."
You're just so
text."
popular.
No, it's not that at all. It's not that at all, because we had to fix the gutters while he was here. And I'm glad it's because he got up on the roof, and the guy was
Yeah.
very competent. So he's coming tomorrow to finish it. And I have to pick up for 3 weeks to wear clothes because I'm not allowed to drive. So I have to get everything from here, moved while he is still here, to drive it to my daughter's tomorrow. He's leaving tomorrow evening. So I got to know, I don't even know what I'm going to, I'll be in California and Detroit, I don't know what the weather is. But I have to pick up
Oh,
because
nice
I
to
want,
hear.
my daughter is a doctor, and she goes away in the morning, she comes home late at night. My son-in-law is a scientist, he's an astrophysicist. So he comes home late, and I don't want to bother them to drive me here if I need something, but I'm halfway there. What I need here is there, but I need there, it's here. I'm living in 2 houses, and it's very, very stressful. So, but I do have to make the best of it. So in the meantime, she got me committed. And I thought I made up with you that we were going to do
I
the
must
whole
have
thing.
misunderstood.
Because she says, "Mommy, Steve called me." I said, "All right, let's go and get it over with."
Well, it's been great.
Wow.
I've consumed so much in the past 2 hours. It went really quickly. I couldn't
Did
believe
you
it.
think it was good? Because
It
I
was
don't want to
great.
be just.
No, it was great. Just talk, just go. Yeah.
I think he's still doing some.
It's great. It's the
Okay,
making of. We'll do
yeah.
a side documentary.
Okay, so if it's okay with Steve, I don't
Yeah.
want to upset you.
When are you coming back? October or something?
The 26th, I believe.
Okay.
Would that, if it's not, then tell me. Then maybe you can come over there to my daughter's house. I don't want to give you a hard time.
No.
I just want to. Once I started, I never want to break up in the middle of a project.
course. Yeah. I mean, it'll be a little rushed, but I think if that's more comfortable for you,
Okay.
we're gonna start presenting like November 10th in class is when our deadlines are. So anytime before that would sort
Okay.
of be.
And if you feel that Steve is telling you that you need to call me to my
Yes.
cell phone, I don't usually hear my cell phone. It's in the pocketbook and I'm there. I don't know. I don't know. You guys always have it on you. You always know about it. And I don't
That's
know.
right.
I'm not so fast in it. But you call it to my daughter's number.
Okay.
And start to talk that you want to talk to Ann, so I'll pick it up. Otherwise, when I see a number, I don't know who it is.
Okay.
I don't want to pick it up because I wanted to, make for my kids. I don't. Sometimes they get messages that I wanted to record it for them. But if you say, "Ann, pick up the phone," then I'll pick it up.
I'll say
And
that.
if you, don't be ashamed if I'll be home. Most of the time, I'm going to be home. In the morning, I go out for a walk over there, but that's all about that I'm doing. So give me a call, and if needed to, we'll squeeze it in this weekend.
Okay.
I mean, Thursday is Yom Kippur, it's not Yom Kippur, but it's Yizkor Shul. So I want to go, but I need to make an arrangement of somebody to take me and bring me back from my daughter's house. He's not going to be already here in town. and I really would want to go for Iska to shul this Thursday. But if you need it badly, I can see you Wednesday.
Okay, well, we can talk about it.
Yeah.
We have class tomorrow morning, so I'll talk to Steve and ask if it's going to be a really bad thing if we wait.
If
And I'm
you-
sure he's been really understanding, so I don't think
Yeah.
that it will be a huge deal.
Okay, so now I am making sure that
It's
you
just
know-
nice that we got the first one in and like broke the
Okay,
ice and
all
everything.
right, then it's
Yeah.
good. We talked a lot today.
We talked a ton.
Right.
Yes.
So the next time I probably will have to take up maybe that much time as you.
I have no idea.
Okay.
It's
If
up
whatever-
to you. It's up to you.
Whatever, if it's flowing, it's good,
Yeah.
it's good.
Great.
But I just don't want to talk your head off. So.
Great. Well, I'll let you go to dinner now.
I have so much.